Hi everyone. We are going to continue with the same story. My name is Book, an autobiography. Part 5. The Golden Age of Print. Looking back, I can see why the 19th century, the age of steam power, has also been called the Golden Age of Print. For it was steam that powered the new press invented in 1814 by Friedrich Koenig, a German like Gutenberg. Gutenberg's press had been around for more than 300 years. When Koenig found a way of using steam instead of hands to operate a printing press. This meant books could be printed far more quickly, and that was good news for the printed words, and of course, good news for books. I was being produced at such a rate I could hardly keep up with myself and all the other changes that were happening around me. Daily newspapers were spreading far and wide, as the steam press made them faster and cheaper to print. And with more and more people learning to read and write, the future looked bright. But there were more changes to come. By the middle of the century, I was used to being mass-produced on the steam press. When I found myself being rolled off, it at greater speed than ever before. I later learned that an American inventor, Richard Hoy, was behind this new development. The rotary press, as it was called, was the closest I have come to a roller coaster ride. Luckily, I would have had my share of rolling in my papyrus days. But the rotary press brought rolling to a new level. I will spare you the technical details, but I remember being on cylinders shaped like a big drum and whirling on ink rollers that were fed by what seemed a never-ending steam of rolled up papers. What a thrill it was to watch my printed pages rolled off at high speed. I couldn't help thinking back to a certain Bai Shang, the Chinese vendor who first came up with the idea of movable type. Here are the cylinders. His clay and porcelain pieces had been replaced with metal ones, but his idea of movable type was alive and well in the printing presses invented 1,000 years later. On the move with steam. Soon, printing houses were springing up all over Europe. New ideas and movements were in the air, and in my printed form, I was reaching out to those who for generations had been held captive by old systems of political and religious beliefs. I guess you have heard of Reformation, a movement that set out to reform the old Roman Catholic Church, which had held power for centuries. Well, it came as no surprise to me that it began in Germany, home of the first printing press. You could even say the Reformation was a child of print, and print was a fairy godmother to books. By beginning of the 17th century, I was busy doing something else too, opening up new continents of imaginations. I was stirring up a rebirth, a renaissance of interest in the ancient cultures. By simply looking inside me at old drawings and texts from ancient Greek and Roman times, artists, scientists, architects, philosophers, poets, and novelists found ideas and inspiration. It was the beginning of what's called the Enlightenment, and it would never have had happened without yours truly. I like to think that it was I, book, who enlightened the Enlightenment, if you know what I mean. Because how else would scientists have learned of all the ideas and all the discoveries that led them to invent amazing new machines in the middle of 18th century? The greatest discovery of that 100 years industrial revolution was the power of steam. And take it from me, book was there. How well? I remember the day in 1825 when the first public steam railway was opened up. Oh, the excitement of sitting on a passenger's lap and feeling my pages being turned, and the pride rushing down my spine as the steam engine puffed its way through the countryside of northern England. Where the rail tracks were leading, I couldn't say, but I know we were speeding past wagons drawn by horses. The locomotives was on the move, and so was the book. A garden in a pocket. Fast forward 100 years, and I had witnessed even more changes in myself and around me, including one world war that had brought millions great sufferings. Yet the centuries seem to have gone by in the twinkle of an eye, or should I say, the flip of the pages? It's as if one day I was being rolled and scrolled, then suddenly I had a spine and a paper hardback cover made from cardboard or leather. Not to mention a removable dust jacket, complete with foldable flaps in case you hadn't noticed. And on my dust jacket is where you will find something called blurb that tells you briefly what I am about. Funny word, blurb. Apparently, it was invented by the American writer Gelid Burgess, who, at a bookseller's meeting in 1907, promoted his latest work with a special cover. On it was a picture of a smiling lady called Belinda Blurb, saying nice things about his book. The idea caught on, and that's why to this day the blurb on my dust jacket says positive things about my content. And a nice word or two about the writer doesn't go amiss either. Years later, with another world war looming, I began to fear for the future. Not again, I thought. Not more people screaming under the clouds of grief. And what would become of book? I had heard Talk of paper being in short supply, even if bombs dropped on warehouses where millions like me were stored. But before, but before that, I was to experience yet another change. Something happened to the stitches and staples in my binding. How strange, I thought. Well, wouldn't you be surprised if you were accustomed to being a hardback to suddenly find yourself a paperback? Now I was held together with glue, and my paperback made it easy to carry me in a pocket or slip me into a handbag. Today, you will find me equally at home on a revolving rack, at a train station, or at an airport. But back in the late 1930s, I was just getting used to the paperback, feeling as people experimented with soft covers in America, Germany, and even England. And when the Second World War came, amid all the hopelessness, unrest, and sadness, many a soldier tucked me into his breast pocket. I was his paperback companion on that terrible journey. I, book, handheld witness to his final hour. But I mustn't dwell on the bad times. Let me just say how pleased I was to be a paperback. My hardback look wasn't about to disappear, but my paperback look caught on with publishers around the world and the growing reading public. And people carried me everywhere, on trains, on buses. They slipped me into their picnic basket, and sometimes, dare I say, I even accompanied them into their bath. Yes, I have experienced the odd sprinkle of bubble across my paperback face. But books had come a long way from being chained to a desk. And believe me, it felt good to be so portable. Not only was I a carrier of the imagination influencing the world of ideas, but I could be carried across continents in a bag or in a briefcase. Wasn't it the Chinese who compared me to a garden in a pocket? I like the sound of that. The book I love are well fingered and thumbed, have tiny butter smudges, may harbor a crumb, the odd cat whisker, a few dog ears, a drop of tear, a brownish stain. I, for one, am glad to say, do not judge a book by its cover, but flits first among its leaves like a hummingbird sipping at a flower. The books I love, I must admit, do not sit behind a museum of a glass. No, the books I love get kissed and squeezed and pressed against my heart. Grace Nichols. So that is end of part 5. We'll continue tomorrow. Till then, stay blessed. Enjoy reading.